Welcome everyone to the Topic 13 overview video for the 2020-2021 Math LRP. We're going to get started here on the home page. We're going to jump into one of the junior grades, grade 5. We are looking at our second last topic area, pretty much our last topic in terms of content before we do consolidation, topic 13. And let's take a look at the expectation cluster together. So topic 13 is based on the overall expectations of D1, data literacy, and D2, probability from the data strand. Under D1, we are focusing on students understanding and using central measures of tendency, mean, median, and mode for grade 4, 5, and 6 to summarize data sets. And we're focusing on students making convincing arguments from data representations, various graphs that they are creating and analyzing. Under D2, we're focusing on students representing the probability of events using descriptive language and growing into using numbers in grade 5 and 6, fractions, percents, and decimals. Let's see what kind of insights the curriculum site has for us here. We're just going to click on the link and jump into compare some grades. We're going to scroll down to data and analysis. That's one of the topics we are going to be looking at, one of the pieces of the topic that we're going to be looking at. And we are going to also be dealing with D2. Jump into D2 there. Compare grades, probability. All right, so for our purposes, we are going to actually look at the visual representation we have created for our just-in-time math session to give us an overview of all the concepts as a continuum. So here it is, continuum of data and probability for topic 13. When we go back to grade 3 concepts, in the data analysis section of things, grade 3s are just working with mean and mode, so no median there, and they're dealing with whole numbers. Working with, understanding those central tendency, what they mean, but also determining, calculating mean and mode. We're also working with making convincing arguments from, in grade 3, we're dealing with frequency tables and various graphs. And using those graphs to make convincing arguments. They're going to be asking questions about those graphs. And this is something that goes across all grade 3, 4, 5, and 6. When we look at central tendency for grade 4, we're looking at mean, median, mode in whole numbers. In grade 5, we add decimal numbers to that. And in grade 6, we do mean, median, mode, and range. And we're comparing now, instead of one data set having a mean, median, mode, central tendency for one data set, we're looking at 2 different data sets. So comparing the mean, median, and mode range for one data set compared to another and looking at what that is telling us. Looking at the making convincing arguments, that continues across the grades. In grade 4, we're dealing with stem and leaf plots and multiple bar graphs. Grade 5, we're dealing with stacked bar graphs particularly, but this time we are in grade 5 and 6, we're adding the concept of how graphs can be misleading and the idea of bias and misleading graphs. And that continues in grade 6. In grade 6, we're dealing with histograms and broken line graphs. The other piece of topic 13 is probability. It starts off in grade 3, pulling back to primary grades, as a likelihood of events. We describe using language like impossible, unlikely, equally likely, likely, and certain, the likelihood of events. And with that, even in grade 3, we're doing some comparing probability across different populations. So what's the likelihood of, a thunderstorm in BC as opposed to a thunderstorm in Ontario? Now, if you ever family who live out in Vancouver, they get lots of rain, but they rarely ever get thunderstorms. So, the likelihood of an avalanche in Ontario as opposed to in BC. Well, in BC, there's mountains. So students can deal with those concepts, comparing probability across populations. And they're doing that while connecting the idea of mean and mode to a data set. So we might have a data set, mean and a mode for BC and Ontario as an example. So that continues in grade 4, likelihood events. This time they're using a line, a probability line to represent the likelihood of events, from impossible to certain and in between. And they're continuing to compare probability across populations. This time they are going to not just do mean and mode, they're mean, median, and mode. And then in grade 5, we get into representing probability through fractions numerically, and then the idea of theoretical versus experimental probability. And then in grade 6, that continues when we add decimals and percents to how to representing probability, but also we are dealing with two independent, that connects to what has been done in data analysis, two independent events, two sets of data, and connecting theoretical versus experimental probability for those events. So that's a big overview of what the continuum of data and probability looks like for across the junior grades. I'm going to take a moment to jump into the teacher supports for our digital curriculum website, the ministry's website. I'm going to jump into D1.6 here, just because this has some content that's particularly interesting. You'll notice that teacher supports has now examples, key concepts, and sample tasks, not for every curriculum expectation, but it is there under data. And when we look at some examples for D1.6, that's looking at misleading graphs, for example. There's some helpful examples here in terms of how you might prompt, what kind of questions students might need to engage with to analyze a graph, and what are some examples of graphs that might be misleading. So that's a really good resource, as always, the digital curriculum website. Now we're going to jump back into our LRP site and see all the different resources that are available there. We have our Math Up lesson connections as usual. And we do have our weeks at a glance for topic 13. And again, that's a great place for you to start your topic as you jump into concepts and different activities. We've put some good content there for you together. Additional problems are always available for you to engage with, along with connections to other key concepts that we've pulled for our curriculum. And as usual, building fluency tasks are available there, and various models and tools, both online versions and examples of what you might access in the class there for you.